The winter night lay heavy over San Giovanni Rotondo, wrapping the friary in a mantle of silence so thick it felt almost sacred. The world outside seemed to be holding its breath. Even the wind, which had swept through the hills all day, fell still as midnight approached. Inside the dim chapel, only a single candle flickered before the tabernacle, casting trembling shadows across the stone floor. Padre Pio knelt alone. Age had bent his back, but not his spirit. His hands, worn from decades of prayer and suffering, rested upon his rosary like a soldier holding his final weapon. He had come here, as he always did in the late hours, to keep watch with Christ. But tonight felt different. A stirring had been growing in his soul all day, a quiet, insistent warning that heaven was drawing near. The candle flame shuddered. Then the silence broke, not with sound, but with presence. A soft radiance bloomed behind him, gentle as moonlight, yet purer than any earthly glow. It was not blinding, rather it invited the heart to bow, the soul to breathe deeper. Padre Pio felt the air grow warm, fragrant with a sweetness that no flower could produce. Slowly, he lifted his head. Before him stood the Blessed Virgin. Her mantle flowed like living light, and her eyes, her eyes held both sorrow and a mother's unending tenderness. Padre Pio felt his knees tremble. "Mother," he whispered. She raised her hand slightly, and peace washed over him, though beneath it he sensed something grave, something urgent. "My son," her voice soft as breath, yet weightier than thunder. "The world has stepped beyond the threshold of danger." And the veil between heaven and earth opened. A soft tremor passed through the chapel as the vision unfolded before Padre Pio's eyes. It was as though the air itself opened, revealing a world layered behind the ordinary one, a realm where the state of souls could be seen with terrifying clarity. In the vision, countless figures walked across a vast plain of dim, shifting shadows. They were not bound in chains nor tormented by flames. Instead, they moved slowly, aimlessly, like silhouettes drained of substance. Their hearts were hollow caverns, echoing with nothing but silence. No prayer rose from their lips, no light flickered in their gaze. They were alive in body, but dead in spirit. Padre Pio felt a chill grip his heart. "These are souls lost in grave sin?" he asked softly. The Virgin shook her head with gentle sorrow. "No, my son," she replied, her voice trembling with compassion. "These are the souls who have simply forgotten God. Forgotten, not rejected. Forgotten, not hated. Forgotten, not rebelled against. And yet this," she said, "was more dangerous than open sin. The greatest danger," she whispered, "is not sin, but forgetfulness." The vision deepened. Padre Pio saw men and women rushing through brightly lit cities, their hands full of devices, distractions, and desires. Every moment was filled with noise, music, notifications, endless scrolling. Their minds were flooded with dopamine, their days consumed by constant stimulation. But beneath all that noise, their hearts were empty, untouched by prayer or contemplation. "They do not commit great evils," the Virgin continued. "They simply live without love, without stillness, without looking toward heaven. And a soul that forgets the divine becomes a shadow." Padre Pio bowed his head, tears rising. In the modern world, he realized, the silence of souls was becoming the greatest darkness of all. The vision shifted again, as if the heavens themselves were turning a page. The Virgin Mary raised her hand, and before Padre Pio appeared what she called the mirror of fire. Its surface rippled like molten gold, then opened into a sweeping view of the modern world. He saw cities, vast, glittering, alive with motion, but beneath their lights, flames smoldered. The fires did not come from war or bombs. They rose from hearts set ablaze by greed, desire, and self-worship. Skyscrapers glowed like embers, streets shimmered with a heat that came not from destruction, but from disordered passion. Padre Pio watched as people hurried through the burning streets, unaware of the fire consuming them. Their arms were full of possessions, devices, luxuries, comforts, yet their souls were starving. Screens reflected on their faces like artificial halos, while their true inner light dimmed. "They have made convenience their religion," the Virgin said softly. "They worship technology more than truth, the body more than the soul." As the flames grew, the consequences became clear. Families, once united, stood fractured. Parents distracted, children wandering without guidance, each living in separate digital worlds. Marriages crumbled under the weight of unmet desires. Children searched for identity and love in the wrong places, lost in a culture that promised pleasure but delivered emptiness. Padre Pio saw millions of people surrounded by crowds, yet utterly alone, isolated, restless, longing for a connection they no longer knew how to seek. The Virgin's voice trembled with sorrow. "When man worships himself," she said, "he loses the world and then himself." The mirror of fire folded into darkness. Padre Pio felt the weight of humanity's self-inflicted wounds pressing on his heart. The earth was burning, not from wrath, but from forgetfulness of the soul. The vision dimmed once more, and when the light returned, Padre Pio found himself standing on the threshold of countless homes, churches, and sanctuaries. A heavy stillness hung over everything, like the world was holding a breath it had forgotten how to release. "These," the Virgin said gently, "are the shepherds of today." Padre Pio looked closer. He saw priests whose hearts had once burned with zeal, now sitting in their rectories, weary, distracted, or afraid of preaching truth. He saw parents, once the first teachers of faith, now absorbed in their screens, handing their children to the world instead of to heaven. He saw leaders, teachers, and guardians entrusted with souls, yet lulled by comfort, fear, or indifference into a deep spiritual sleep. Their eyes were half closed, their hands hung loosely at their sides. They were not wicked, they were simply tired, overwhelmed, and drifting. And because the shepherds slept, the flock wandered. Churches appeared next in the vision, long aisles, empty pews, candles guttering as their flames struggled against drafts of apathy. The sacred silence, once filled with the heartbeat of prayer, now echoed with absence. Only a few knelt, lonely sparks of devotion in vast shadows. "The light dims," the Virgin whispered, "not because God has left, but because so few seek him." Padre Pio felt the ache of her words pierce straight through him. Then came her final warning, spoken with the sorrow of a mother who sees danger approaching. "A flock without shepherds becomes prey." Padre Pio bowed his head, trembling. He saw how fragile humanity's faith had become, thin as smoke rising from an extinguished candle, ready to disappear with the slightest breath. And he felt, with crushing grief, how easily the world could be led astray when its guardians slept. The air around Padre Pio rippled again, and the vision deepened into a horizon lined with gathering clouds, dark, swollen, and trembling with unseen force. The Virgin's expression grew solemn, though not fearful. What she showed next was not the end of the world, but the beginning of a great purification. "A time of trial approaches," she said softly, "not to destroy, but to awaken." The sky cracked with distant flashes. Padre Pio saw natural upheavals sweeping across the earth, mountains trembling, oceans rising with restless fury, storms forming with unnatural speed. The world groaned like a living creature burdened by the weight of human choices. Then the vision shifted. He saw nations turning against one another, societies splitting into bitter factions. Neighbors no longer spoke. Families sat at tables divided by ideologies and wounds. Every word became a weapon, every disagreement a battlefield. The fabric of community, once woven with trust, tore apart thread by thread. From the streets rose scenes of violence, anger erupting like sparks in a dry field, hatred multiplied faster than peace could heal. People who had once lived side by side now viewed each other as enemies. But the darkest part was invisible to the earthly eye. Padre Pio saw a spiritual war stretching across the heavens, a fierce struggle between light and darkness. Angels and shadows clashed in a battle that mirrored the interior struggle of the human heart. Souls stood at the center, pulled by two forces, one calling toward truth, the other toward despair. "This is not the end," the Virgin said, her voice steady as the storm raged around them. "It is the time of cleansing." She looked at Padre Pio with deep sorrow, yet with unwavering hope. God does not punish. Man punishes himself with his own choices. And the storm continued to rise. The storm faded from the vision like a curtain drawn aside, and in its place came a profound stillness, so deep it felt as though time itself had stopped. Padre Pio sensed something immense approaching, something neither fearful nor destructive, but awe-inspiring in its purity. The Virgin lifted her hand, and a radiant light appeared in the distance. It grew slowly, gently, as though it were not invading the world, but descending with infinite tenderness. "This," she said softly, "is the final mercy heaven will give before judgment." The light continued to expand, illuminating every corner of the vision. It was not like earthly light. It pierced without wounding, revealed without condemning. As it touched the hearts of people across the world, Padre Pio saw them drop to their knees, not because they were forced, but because their souls recognized the truth. "This is the illumination of conscience," the Virgin explained. "Every soul will see itself as God sees it." Padre Pio watched in astonishment. Men and women of every age, every nation, suddenly saw the true state of their hearts, every wound, every sin, every moment of grace they had ignored. Tears flowed, prayers rose, and for many it became the moment of profound conversion. But not all hearts responded. Some trembled in fear and turned away, unwilling to face the truth offered to them. Yet the light remained gentle. "This gift," she said, "is for those who still have the desire to return. For the humble it will be hope, for the proud it will be a warning." Then she laid her hand over her heart and whispered, "Before the storm, heaven will knock one last time." Padre Pio felt chills run through his soul. This final mercy was both a miracle and a call, one last invitation from heaven before humanity stepped into the days of purification. When the final vision faded, the chapel returned to its quiet darkness. The candle before the tabernacle flickered weakly, as though exhausted by the weight of what had just been revealed. Padre Pio remained kneeling, but his strength had left him. His hands shook. His breath came in uneven waves, and then, as though the burden within him had torn through the last barrier of composure, he collapsed forward, falling into a flood of tears. He did not weep for himself. He wept for the world. He wept for the souls walking like shadows, for families burning from within, for shepherds asleep at their posts. He wept for the rising storm, for the future wounds of humanity, for the countless hearts that would suffer because they had forgotten the one who made them. His tears fell onto the cold stone, each one carrying a weight that no man could measure. More than anything, he wept because he had felt, truly felt, the sorrow of the Mother of God. Her pain was not anger. It was the heartbreak of a mother who watches her children drift toward the edge of a cliff, calling to them while they no longer hear. It was the sorrow of a love too deep to abandon even one soul, yet forced to stand helpless as millions walked away from grace. Padre Pio pressed his hands to his face and cried with the agony of a saint whose heart had been allowed to feel the wounds of heaven. "My mother, what can I do?" he whispered through trembling lips. There was no accusation in his voice, only a plea, born from a heart ready to break itself for the salvation of even one soul. And then, gathering what little strength remained, he made a promise that rose from the very depths of his vocation. "I will offer everything, my pain, my wounds, my nights without sleep, my blood, my breath. Take it, Mother. Take it for the souls most in danger. Let my suffering not be wasted." As he offered himself, the light returned, soft, gentle, like the first glow of dawn. The Virgin Mary, still radiant with sorrow, yet overflowing with compassion, appeared once more beside him. She approached slowly, as a mother approaches her child in anguish. She placed her hand upon his bowed head, fingers warm with celestial tenderness. The moment her touch rested on him, peace flooded into his trembling body. His breath steadied, his tears slowed, though they did not cease. "My son," she said, with a voice that seemed to mend the very air around them, "tell them not to fear." Her hand gently stroked his hair, like a mother comforting a suffering child. "Tell them to return to my son." Padre Pio closed his eyes, letting her words carve themselves into his soul. Hope remains. The chapel fell quiet again, but the silence was no longer heavy. It was sacred, filled with a promise, a mission, and the lingering warmth of a mother who had not abandoned her children. The visions had ended, yet their echoes remained, alive, urgent, and trembling in the air like the final chime of a bell. Padre Pio stayed in the chapel long after the radiance had faded. The world outside continued in its restless slumber, unaware that heaven had spoken a message meant not for one man, but for all of humanity. For the revelations given to Padre Pio were never meant to inspire terror. They were meant to awaken. The Blessed Mother had not descended to frighten her children, but to shake them gently from the numbness of modern life. Her warnings were not thunderbolts of wrath, but the desperate plea of a mother calling out before it was too late. Her message was simple, yet profound enough to shift the course of a soul. Return to prayer, not as an obligation, but as a lifeline. In a world drowning in noise, distraction, and instant gratification, prayer becomes the anchor that keeps the heart from drifting into emptiness. It is the way back to clarity, humility, and hope. Love more. The Blessed Mother revealed that the greatest crisis of the age was not catastrophe, but coldness. People pass each other like phantoms, busy but empty, connected by wires yet disconnected in spirit. Only love, sacrificial, patient, intentional, can rebuild what the world has broken. Take responsibility for the soul. Careers, success, comfort, and pleasure dominate the desires of modern life, but the soul, eternal and fragile, is neglected. The warnings given to Padre Pio remind us that no achievement, no possession, no pleasure can be carried beyond the grave. What remains is the state of the heart. Resist the numbness of the age. The greatest danger, the Virgin said, is forgetfulness, a life lived in distraction, where the soul grows silent and the conscience dims. In the endless stream of screens, noise, and temptations, the heart becomes tired, apathetic, and spiritually blind. The message calls each person to awaken, to reclaim stillness, awareness, and the courage to choose the good. Padre Pio understood. He knew that humanity's greatest battle would not be fought with weapons, but within the soul, against indifference, pride, and forgetfulness of God. As the first hints of dawn touched the chapel windows, Padre Pio slowly rose from the floor. His body was worn, but his spirit carried the unshakable resolve of one who had been entrusted with heaven's plea. He walked toward the altar and knelt again, this time not in sorrow, but in mission. He picked up his rosary, the weapon he had carried through years of suffering, trials, and miracles. The beads slipped between his fingers like drops of light. His lips moved in soft prayer, each word a plea for the world, each breath an offering for the souls in danger. In that silent chapel, Padre Pio prayed for humanity with a love that did not tire, a mercy that did not fade, and a hope that refused to die. And through the darkness of the age, his prayer rose like a small, steady flame, one that still burns today, calling every heart back home.